Stop waiting for a fall to change your habits. That's the piece of advice nobody gives you, and it might be the most important sentence in this entire video. Every year, doctors tell millions of people over 60 to be careful, as if caution alone were a strategy. It isn't. Being careful doesn't rebuild the muscle you've lost. It doesn't retrain the balance system in your inner ear, and it certainly doesn't reverse what the CDC calls one of the most under-discussed health crises in aging America: falls. Here's the number that should stop you in your seat. According to the CDC's steady initiative Stopping Elderly Accidents, Deaths and Injuries, roughly 1 in 4 adults over 65 will fall this year. Not eventually. This year. And falls remain the leading cause of both fatal and non-fatal injuries among older adults in the United States. That's not a scare tactic. That's a documented public health statistic, and I'll have the sources in the description so you can look at them yourself. I'm Dr. Margaret Wilson, and for the better part of my career I've worked with patients navigating exactly this stage of life, the stage where your body starts sending you signals that something has shifted, even when nothing happened. No injury, no diagnosis, just a growing sense that your legs don't quite trust the ground the way they used to. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something clearly. This is not just aging. This is physiology, and physiology can be worked with. Before we go further, I want to ask you something, and I mean this genuinely. I read every single comment on these videos, so tell me, how old are you right now? And has there been a moment recently reaching for something, standing up too fast, stepping off a curb where your balance surprised you in a way you didn't like? I ask because the answer tells me more about your real risk than your age on paper ever could. Now, I promised you something surprising, so let's get it out early. The single strongest predictor of whether someone will suffer a serious fall in the next year isn't their age. It isn't even how strong their legs feel. It's a simple 30-second test you can do at home involving nothing but a chair, and I'm going to walk you through exactly how it works when we reach number 1. Researchers at institutions studying frailty and mobility have found this test outperforms self-reported balance confidence, and even outperforms grip strength alone in predicting who ends up in the emergency room. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll be able to test yourself in your own living room. We're counting down 5 things that genuinely change fall risk. Not folklore, not be careful advice, but mechanisms your body responds to at a cellular level. 5 to 1, least powerful to most powerful. Let's begin. Number 5. Your vitamin D and calcium status, and the quiet way it destabilizes you from the inside. Here's a sentence that surprises most people the first time they hear it. Vitamin D isn't just a bone vitamin. It's directly involved in how your muscles, especially the fast twitch fibers responsible for catching yourself when you stumble, receive and respond to nerve signals. Multiple clinical studies, including research reviewed by the National Institutes of Health, have linked low vitamin D levels in older adults to measurably slower reaction times and reduced muscle fiber recruitment. Some trials examining vitamin D supplementation in deficient seniors found meaningful reductions in fall rates over the study period, particularly in people who started out with genuinely low blood levels. Why does this hit older bodies so much harder? After about age 70, your skin's ability to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight drops substantially. Some research puts the decline at close to 50% compared to a 20-year-old skin exposed to the same sunlight. At the same time, kidney function, which converts vitamin D into its active form, naturally declines. So you're producing less and converting less, at exactly the life stage when you need more. Let me tell you about Eleanor, 74, from a small town outside Portland, Oregon. Eleanor came to me after 2 near falls in her kitchen within the same month. Her blood work showed vitamin D levels well below the healthy range, common, by the way, in people who spend more time indoors as they age. We corrected her levels with a physician-guided supplementation plan alongside dietary calcium, and within a few months she described her own balance as less like walking on a boat. That's not a clinical measurement, but it's exactly the kind of subjective shift that tends to precede measurable improvement. Practically speaking, this means getting your vitamin D levels checked with a simple blood test rather than guessing. Supplementation needs vary enormously person to person, and your doctor should guide the dose. Morning sunlight exposure, even just 15 minutes without sunscreen a few times a week, supports natural production. And the synergy tip here is important. Vitamin D absorption improves significantly when taken with a meal containing some dietary fat, since it's a fat-soluble vitamin. Taking it on an empty stomach is one of the most common reasons people don't see the benefit they're expecting. Number 4. Protein intake and resistance training. Your defense against a condition called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia is simply the medical term for age-related muscle loss. And the numbers here are sobering. Research published in geriatric medicine journals estimates that adults can lose somewhere between 3 and 8% of their muscle mass per decade after age 30, and that rate accelerates noticeably after 60. This isn't just about looking less toned. Muscle is what catches you when you trip, what gets you out of a chair without using your arms, what keeps your gait steady on uneven sidewalks. Here's where it gets interesting, and where I need to explain a term you may have heard before: anabolic resistance. In simple terms, this means that as we age, our muscles become less efficient at using the protein we eat to actually build new muscle tissue. Think of it like a delivery truck that used to drop off 10 packages at every stop, and now, no matter how many packages you load onto the truck, it only manages to deliver 6 or 7. The muscle receiving dock has become less responsive. This is why older adults often need meaningfully more protein per meal than younger adults do. To get the same building response, some research suggests closer to 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per sitting to maximally stimulate muscle repair in people over 65, compared to lower amounts that suffice for younger adults. Combine that protein intake with resistance exercise, even simple exercises using resistance bands or body weight, and you create the actual stimulus your muscles need to respond to that protein. Protein without the mechanical signal from exercise is like leaving those delivery packages sitting on the truck. The muscle needs both the raw material and the instruction to use it. I think here of Harold, 68, a retired school teacher from outside Columbus, Ohio, who told me flatly that he thought lifting weights was for young people. Harold started with nothing more than resistance bands, twice a week, alongside modestly increasing his protein at breakfast: eggs and Greek yogurt instead of just toast. 8 weeks later, his wife told me he climbed the stairs at their cabin without stopping to catch his breath at the landing, something he hadn't done in over 2 years. For practical application, aim to spread protein across your meals rather than loading it all at dinner, since your body can only use so much at once for muscle repair. Pair your protein intake with resistance training 2 to 3 times a week. Light dumbbells, resistance bands, or even bodyweight movements like sit-to-stands count. And the synergy tip: doing your resistance exercise in the hours before a protein-containing meal appears to enhance the muscle-building response compared to exercise done in isolation, because the exercise itself increases how sensitive your muscle tissue is to the protein that follows. Now, before we get to the top 3, and these next 3 matter enormously, I want to ask you directly for a favor. If this information is landing for you, if you're recognizing yourself or someone you love in what I'm describing, hit subscribe and tap the like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people exactly like you, people who deserve real answers instead of vague warnings to be careful. I read the comments, so if you've made changes because of a previous video, tell me down below. It matters to me, and it matters to other people deciding whether to trust this information. Now, number 3, balance training itself, and specifically, why practices like Tai Chi have such a disproportionately large effect on fall prevention. This one consistently surprises people because it seems almost too gentle to matter. But multiple controlled studies, including reviews published through the Cochrane Collaboration, one of the most respected bodies for evaluating medical evidence, have found that structured balance exercise programs can reduce fall rates in older adults by a substantial margin, with some specific trials showing reductions approaching 40% or more in fall incidence among participants who practiced consistently. Here's why this works at a level deeper than most people expect. Your balance isn't controlled by your legs alone. It's controlled by a 3-way conversation between your inner ear's vestibular system, the visual input from your eyes, and something called proprioception, your body's internal sense of where your limbs are in space without looking at them. As we age, all 3 of these systems degrade somewhat, but proprioception in particular weakens due to reduced nerve signal speed and sensitivity in the joints and feet. Balance training doesn't just strengthen muscles, it actively retrains the communication between these 3 systems, essentially resharpening a sense you didn't know was dulling. Think of it like a radio losing its tuning over the years. The station is still broadcasting, but your receiver has drifted slightly off frequency, so the signal comes through fuzzy. Balance exercises are like manually retuning that dial, sharpening the signal so your brain gets clearer, faster information about your own body's position. Dorothy, 79, from a suburb outside Sacramento, started a simple standing balance routine after a bad stumble getting out of her car. Nothing dramatic, standing on one foot near her kitchen counter for support, tandem walking heel to toe down her hallway, twice daily. 3 months in, she told me she felt comfortable walking her dog on grass again, uneven ground she'd been avoiding entirely. For practical application, start simple, standing on one foot near a sturdy countertop for support, working up to 10 to 20 seconds per side, or walking heel to toe in a straight line down a hallway. Tai Chi classes designed specifically for older adults are widely available and are one of the best studied interventions in this entire category. Aim for at least 2 to 3 sessions a week, since consistency matters more than intensity here. The synergy tip: practicing balance exercises with your eyes open first, then progressing to brief moments with eyes closed once you're steady, forces your vestibular and proprioceptive systems to work harder without the crutch of visual input, accelerating the retraining effect. Number 2. Grip strength and total body functional strength. The surprising whole body marker researchers now consider one of the best single predictors of frailty. This one tends to catch people off guard. Why would grip strength, something in your hand, predict falls, which happen in your legs? Because grip strength isn't really about your hand at all. It's a window into your entire body's muscular and neurological health. Large population studies, including research published in respected medical journals like The Lancet, have found that grip strength correlates strongly with overall frailty, recovery capacity, and even mortality risk in older adults. Likely because it reflects overall muscle quality and nervous system function throughout the body, not just in the forearm. The mechanism connects back to inflammation. As we age, many people experience a low-grade chronic rise in inflammatory markers throughout the body, sometimes called inflammaging in the research literature. This chronic inflammation interferes with muscle repair and nerve signaling throughout the entire musculoskeletal system, hand strength included. So when grip strength declines, it's often an early signal that this broader inflammatory and muscular decline is already underway elsewhere in the body, including in the muscles that keep you upright. Robert, 71, from a rural town in upstate New York, mentioned almost as an aside that he'd struggled recently to open a jar his wife handed him, something that embarrassed him more than he let on. That small comment led us to look at his overall functional strength, and sure enough, his lower body strength testing showed similar decline. Robert started simple functional resistance work, squats using a chair for support, and hand strengthening with a simple gripper tool 3 times a week. 4 months later, not only was the jar no longer a problem, his wife reported he seemed steadier getting up from the couch, something neither of them had consciously connected to the same root cause. Practically, functional full-body resistance training: squats, sit-to-stands, rows using a resistance band 2 to 3 times weekly, builds the same strength and neurological responsiveness reflected in grip strength testing. A simple hand gripper tool, used for a few minutes daily, is a low-effort way to track your own progress over time, since improving grip numbers tend to move in parallel with improving whole-body strength. The synergy tip: combining this strength work with anti-inflammatory dietary patterns emphasizing fatty fish, colorful vegetables, and reducing highly processed foods appears to enhance the muscle repair process, since lower background inflammation allows muscle tissue to rebuild more efficiently after each session. And now, number 1, the single most powerful predictor I promised you at the start, and the one I most want you to try today. It's called the 30-second sit-to-stand test, and it measures something even more specific than raw strength: muscle power. Power is different from strength, and this distinction matters enormously for fall prevention. Strength is how much force your muscles can generate. Power is how quickly they can generate that force. And research on aging consistently shows that muscle power declines faster than muscle strength as we get older. Some studies suggest power can decline at roughly twice the rate of strength after age 60. That matters because catching yourself during a stumble isn't a slow, sustained effort. It's an instantaneous, explosive one. You don't have time to slowly build force. You need it immediately. The test itself is simple enough to try right after this video. Sit in a sturdy, armless chair with your feet flat on the floor and your arms crossed over your chest. Time yourself for 30 seconds and count how many complete times you can stand up fully and sit back down. Researchers studying mobility and frailty in older adults have used this exact test because the number of repetitions you complete correlates strongly with fall risk, independent of age alone. Generally speaking, completing significantly fewer repetitions than others in your age group is associated with meaningfully elevated fall risk in published research, and the encouraging part is that this number is trainable. The reason this works so specifically for aging bodies comes back to those fast-twitch muscle fibers I mentioned earlier, the ones responsible for quick, powerful movements rather than slow, endurance-based ones. These fibers are disproportionately lost with age compared to slow-twitch fibers, partly due to reduced motor neuron signaling, and partly due to those same mitochondrial changes that affect energy production at the cellular level. Mitochondria, for those unfamiliar with the term, are essentially the energy factories inside every cell, and aging mitochondria become less efficient at rapidly producing the burst of energy those fast-twitch fibers need. Training specifically for power, moving with intentional speed on the up phase of an exercise, even a gentle sit-to-stand, appears to help preserve this fast-twitch capacity in a way that slow, steady strength training alone does not fully replicate. I think of Margaret, no relation, just a coincidence of shared names, 76, from a small coastal town in Maine, who could only complete 6 repetitions on her first sit-to-stand test, well below what her physician hoped to see. Over 10 weeks working with intentional explosive standing, rising as quickly as safely possible from the chair, then sitting back down slowly, and controlled, her repetitions nearly doubled. More importantly, she told me she caught herself without falling when she tripped over her own doormat, something she was certain would have ended in a fall just months earlier. Practically, try this test today, right now if you're able, safely and near something sturdy to hold if needed. If your numbers are lower than you'd like, the training solution is straightforward. Practice sit-to-stands from a sturdy chair, focusing on rising with as much controlled speed as you comfortably can, for 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions, 2 to 3 times weekly. And the synergy tip that ties this entire list together: pairing this power-focused training with adequate protein intake from item 4, and doing it on a foundation of sufficient vitamin D from item 5, appears to produce meaningfully better strength gains than power training alone, because you're addressing the fuel, the raw material, and the mechanical stimulus simultaneously, rather than any single piece in isolation. I want to leave you with something before you go. Independence in your 70s, 80s, and beyond isn't handed to you, and it isn't taken from you by age alone either. It's shaped, quietly and continuously, by decisions like the ones we've talked about today. Decisions about what's on your plate, how you spend 20 minutes of your afternoon, whether you take a test that costs you nothing but 30 seconds. I've watched patients rebuild trust in their own bodies at 70, at 75, even past 80, and I want you to hear this clearly. It is not too late. Not for vitamin D, not for protein and resistance training, not for balance work, not for grip strength, and certainly not for that sit-to-stand test sitting right in front of you. Quality of life in these years isn't about avoiding effort. It's about directing it toward the things that actually work, backed by real evidence rather than vague caution. If this video gave you something useful, please subscribe, so I can keep bringing you real evidence-based information instead of scare tactics dressed up as health advice. And I'd love to know which one of these 5 surprised you the most, and are you going to try the sit-to-stand test today? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next video.